The DC multiverse is vast, and honestly, rather confusing. Luckily, today we're only talking about its weirder worlds. Gotham by Gaslight, like most Elseworld stories, is just super freaking cool. It's such an obviously brilliant concept. Take Batman, the greatest detective, plop him in the Victorian era, and have him take on one of the most compelling unsolved serial killer cases in history, Jack the Ripper. But then they go and make it even cooler by having Jack move to this really awesome Victorian Gotham City and give Batman and the Ripper a personal connection. The story even sees Bruce accused of being the killer himself, which adds yet another layer on top of everything else. Also, we have to talk about how incredibly cool the art style in this comic is, which came from Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy, and it just works perfectly in this Victorian setting. It's actually just a big old treat to read. Gotham by Gaslight was one of DC's most successful Elseworlds stories, and it got expanded on as Earth 19 with even more Victorian-era steampunk-style DC heroes, including the Atom, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman, not to mention versions of a bunch of Batman's rogues gallery. Next up, Earth 47 is home to a version of the Justice League known as the Love Syndicate, whose members include Sunshine Superman, Shooting Star, who is actually Bruce Wayne, who got inspired by a shooting star instead of a bat, Speed Freak, who is a speedster, obviously, Brother Power, who is a mannequin brought to life by a lightning bolt, Prez Record, who is the immortal president of the United States, and the Magic Lantern, who is just a Green Lantern that literally looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. It's fantastic. As you may have noticed, it's all love in this universe, with everything being seemingly inspired by the 70s, and everyone just being pretty darn groovy. This universe first appeared in Animal Man number 23 and unfortunately got removed by the Crisis on Infinite Earths, but luckily, Grant Morrison liked it so much that he brought it back and included it in his Multiversity guidebook, meaning it can totally come back at some point. Next up, the Linearverse is an alternate reality where the people age so slowly that it's almost safe to say that they don't age at all. Batman began his career in 1939, with his youth lasting for decades instead of the normal aging of a human. In a way, this kind of represents how comic book characters seemingly never age and grow old, except in certain stories. Now, by the late 20th century, the world had most of its superheroes, and after this point, things get a little whack and just kinda go completely off the rails. Earth became a dystopia ruled by the wealthy, which is a little bit too real, and a great disaster was foreseen that actually came to pass. Then, the world became very similar to the one in the Earth AD storyline. Anthropomorphized animals had become the rulers of the planet, with humans devolving, save for Kamandi and a few others. Then, in the 25th century, humanity seemingly built a high-tech society which saw the rise of Michael Carter, Booster Gold. In the 31st century, Earth became the base of the Legion of Superheroes, who were an interplanetary superhero team. This world, it's just a wild ride. Batman Holy Terror was the very first comic to actually carry the Elseworlds logo, and boy was it a strong start. The story of Holy Terror takes place in an alternate timeline where Oliver Cromwell lived long enough to solidify the rule of Puritans in 17th century England. That changed, and 300 years later, the entirety of North America is part of a commonwealth led and run by a super oppressive priestly government that does all it does in the name of God. Being a Batman story, we obviously follow Bruce Wayne, who in this world starts off by preparing to become another member of the clergy before he learns that his parents were assassinated by the government because of their radical political beliefs. So naturally, he becomes Batman to fight back. Along the way, he uncovers some incredibly dark secrets held by this oppressive government, including the fate of a whole bunch of metahumans who either became victims of government experiments or were created by the government in the first place. JLA Age of Wonder is an Elseworlds story that gives us a world where Superman lands on Earth in the 1850s and makes himself known to the world at the 1876 Centennial Exposition. Naturally, this Superman starts working with the greatest minds of his time, including Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, and of course, this world's Lex Luthor. Unfortunately, since humans be humans, a lot of their new technological innovations are really just going towards massive devices of destruction and war. So, to combat this, Superman and the League of Science do whatever they can to prevent the start of World War I. This world is very clearly steampunk inspired in a wholly different way to Gotham by Gaslight, and we get really cool versions of Green Lantern, Starman, and the Flash, but reimagined as Victorian-era scientists who are also superheroes. But arguably, the best part about this world is that it comes to us in a 2-issue comic miniseries, so you can read it in like less than a day. Tangent Comics was a DC Comics imprint created in 1997 and was made up of various one-shots focused on creating all new characters using established DC names like the Joker, Batman, the Flash, etc, etc. Now the Tangent universe, also known as Earth 97, radically diverged from our own timeline thanks to the appearance of metahumans who interfered in the Cuban Missile Crisis, which escalated drastically, leading to a limited nuclear exchange that resulted in the obliteration of both Florida and Cuba. Now the heroes of this world are pretty radically different. For example, this world's Flash is actually the first human born in space who gained light-based powers. Wonder Woman is an exiled warrior from another planet, which is, somewhat similar. And Green Lantern is a mysterious character who can bring back the dead. Next up is the Survival Zone. Now, the Survival Zone is a world that has had only one very tiny appearance, but the appearance it had seems incredibly hilarious. In the classic version of Supergirl's origin story, the Survival Zone is a pocket dimension discovered by Kara's pops, Zor-El, before the destruction of Krypton. Now why is it called the Survival Zone? Oh, let me tell you. It's called the Survival Zone because it's where Zor-El and Allura had run off to survive the destruction of the Kryptonian homeworld. The absolutely hilarious part about the Survival Zone is that Zor-El seems to have just decided that he wouldn't tell a single other soul on Krypton about the existence of a surefire way to save millions of Kryptonians. Instead, the pair saved themselves and avoided the destruction of everyone and everything they've ever known. Appearing in Superboy number 95, Earth 95 is a world that kind of makes no sense. And it's all because of how it is that the heroes even get there. Well, actually, for starters, what's really weird is that this comic's main heroes include both of Superman's parents, Jor-El and Lara. Instead of traveling to this alternate Earth in any of the ways we have ever seen before, Jor-El and Lara actually have to make their ship bigger and bigger and bigger in order to get there. Now we've seen stuff like this with concepts like a microverse, so I guess going from a microverse to a regular world again would kind of be the same thing, but for some reason my brain really just cannot comprehend how you can get so large that you enter a different universe. This kind of hurts my brain. We're moving on. Next up is Earth 235, and it's a world that plays host to DC's Real Worlds imprint. Now as you can probably guess from the title, Real Worlds takes place in a world very much like our own. Superheroes don't exist in the way that we are used to seeing in comic books. For example, Real Worlds Batman follows Charlie Duffy, a 27-year-old disabled man who works as a convenience store worker in New York and is friendly and well known in the neighborhood. He named an old cat lady as Catwoman, and his old friend Clarissa was Robin, with her ex-boyfriend being the Joker. Do you see why it's weird? The funny thing is, it's actually still really inspiring. It's real-life people inspired by heroes in various different ways to start fighting crime in their own unique little real-world ways. And it's cute. Kind of. Next up is Earth 265, which was featured fittingly in Flash issue number 265. The story featured an invasion from another alternate Earth, or the denizens of that Earth were in danger of being struck by a comet, and they decided to vibrate their Earth fast enough that it would swap places with the main universe Earth, sparing their world and destroying ours instead. It's a rather interesting concept in a rather interesting early Flash comic, but the story isn't the part that's weird. I mean, yeah, it's weird, but the really strange part comes when we finally meet the denizens of this alternate world. The dominant species on this Earth have evolved not from apes like us, but from cetaceans, so dolphins. Naturally, they are like bluish, purplish, gray color, and they have pointed ears like elves. It's weird, I don't know.
Number 10. Claw. Claw is actually an alternate persona of the Hulk that resides within the character in the reality of Earth 616. So not an alternate in terms of being from another world or reality, but still an alternate in terms of him being a very different version of the character than what we're used to seeing. Claw even looks very different to the Hulk. When it comes to the heroic version we're used to seeing and reading in the comics, Claw couldn't be more different. He is basically the polar opposite, being malicious, vicious, and evil-minded in nature and behavior. And if you're like, well, the Hulk he can be pretty bad sometimes. He's like got a heart of gold though, the Hulk. The Hulk's lovely. Number 9. Age of Apocalypse. In the reality of Earth 295, aka Age of Apocalypse, Bruce Banner never saved Rick Jones from the Gamma Bomb test in order to become the Hulk. Instead, he became the Thing as a result of experimenting on himself after Apocalypse had conquered the Earth. Banner with General Thaddeus Ross was part of humanity's last stand. He would end up betraying the Human High Council and pledge his loyalty to Mikhail in exchange for test subjects. Banner would then discover how to transform into the giant grey super strong beast known as the Thing, and would eventually kind of flip sides once more to protect the humans from a gamma bomb that he himself had designed. Following this, he would become green and end up as Apocalypse's captive. And friends, before we move on to the next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it, be sure to show us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Starman. Starman is an alternate version of the Hulk who comes to us from the Marvel What If story from issue 91 of the second series. In this story, we get to see a version of the Hulk where it is the alternate monstrous persona known here as Starman that is actually the kind, gentle, heroic side of this character, and Bruce Banner himself, who is actually the true monster. He's the not so good side of the character, the villain side. Bruce Banner here is a colonel who is obsessed with his job developing weapons for the military. A lot of the rage that he lives with ends up being taken out on his wife and his romantic partner, Betty Ross, to the point that she tries to in fact get out of the relationship, talking to her father about it, but her father basically dismisses her pleas. In the end, Starman is unable to help Betty, who is committed to a mental health facility by Doc Samson, after Colonel Banner threatens him. Doc Samson was actually gonna try to help Betty, but it didn't work out. It's such a sad, awful story, but such a strange version of the Hulk as well. Starman. Number 7. Hulkbot 3000. The Hulkbot 3000 was kind of a roundabout invention of Tony Stark's. He created the builder bot group known as the Smiths, which in turn made Hulkbot. Hulkbot 3000 was actually created to test a crown that could alter a person's behavior, which was actually created in the hopes of curing Tony's alcoholism. True story. Though he claimed the crown was being developed in order to help with the Hulk's often raging personality. What's really odd about Hulkbot though, other than the creation's purpose for existing, is that Hulkbot 3000 is only one of the many different robot versions of the Hulk to exist in the comics, and even in the 616 universe. Like, there have been a lot of Robo-Hulks. I could probably do a top 10 list on robot Hulks. Number 6. Breaker Apart. Also known as the Breaker of Worlds, this is a version of the Hulk belonging to an alternate future that doesn't yet have an official number, but was given the temporary reality number of Earth 781 for now. So we'll just have that number here because you never know, it could become official. He makes his first appearance in the Immortal Hulk series in issue 20, but wouldn't be given the name Breaker Apart until issue 25. In this alternate future, Hulk ends up surviving until the end of the universe due to his immortality. He ends up being possessed, however, by the One Below All and killing some of his universe's most powerful beings, including Galactus and Franklin Richards. Breaker Apart later garners the attention of the sentience of the universe, who looks to merge with him in order to create the beginning of a new universe or cosmos. This is probably also one of the most powerful alternate versions of the Hulk because he basically becomes like Galactus. Evil Galactus? Galactus already is pretty evil, I guess. Galactus to me is neutral. He's just hungry. He's cool. Number 5. Ruins. In the Ruins reality of Earth 9591, the Hulk isn't quite as fantastical or as fabulous as our 616 version of the characters. So fabulous. Runes is a series that allows us to get a glimpse of an alternate reality where superpowers are more like curses or death sentences, more realistic to how things might actually go for those who received them in the real world, like the Hulk. Here, Bruce Banner does rush onto the Gamma Bomb test site in an attempt to protect Rick Jones, who wandered onto the testing grounds. However, he doesn't gain a giant, super strong and all green persona as a result. Instead, he becomes riddled with multiplying green tumors, which ultimately tear him apart from the inside out, mutating him into something much more horrific to behold. It's both weird and terrifying. Number 4. 1,000 Hulks. What if there wasn't just one Hulk, but multiple Hulks? Hundreds of Hulks, if you will. That is a reality we explore in the alternate reality belonging to issue 71 of the second volume of What If. In that issue, we get to explore a world where gamma bombs end up being dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and transforms hundreds of people. This actually gives the people of Japan a powerful army of Hulks, which allows them to conquer the US and rule over them for years. While one Hulk is already pretty strange, living in a reality where there are multiple Hulks who created a Hulk army seems even more bizarre by comparison. Number 3. Orange Hulk. Maybe one of the most random alternates out there. Orange Hulk hails from the reality of Age of Apocalypse. Unlike the other version we talked about way earlier on this list, Orange Hulk has no attachment to Bruce Banner, and as a matter of fact, we don't actually know who he really is under all that orange and all that Hulk. What we do know is that Orange Hulk is solar powered, gaining strength from the sun, and is in fact implied to be stronger during daylight hours because of this. Orange Hulk serves on Weapon Omega's Black Legion team, and honestly, every time I see him, he makes me want some Sunny D. That's not any kind of paid endorsement, to be clear, that's just the truth. Also, I just really like Sunny D. Number 2. Groovy Hulk. Groovy Hulk is the nickname for the alternate version of the Hulk that we get from the original What If series. In issue 12 of the series, we get to discover what the world would be like had Rick Jones become the Hulk instead of Bruce Banner, with Rick Jones throwing Banner into the trench at the last second instead of the other way around, taking the full brunt of the gamma radiation himself. Oh no, Rick Jones! Rick's version of the Hulk had a notably cooler way of speaking, being heavily influenced by the groovy slang of the 60s. I suppose because Rick was a young and hip teenager, so that's how he talks instead of the other way that the Hulk talks. And that's not even the weirdest part about this whole story. It also comes with a convenient ending where Bruce Banner finds a way to fix Rick, causing him and the Hulk to split. Hulk is stuck in the negative zone but finds happiness and a girlfriend randomly there, becoming their champion, while Captain Marvel is also affected by Banner's cure for Rick, being tied to him as well. The treatment also happens to cure Marvel's cancer. Gotta love a weird cure-all happy ending. Number 1. The Hulk Dogs. What is weirder than 1,000 Hulks? How about a few doggo Hulks? That's right, I did not forget about 2003 Hulk. In that film, there were 3 dog versions of the Hulk, each dog a member of a different breed, that were made by David Banner, Bruce's father. One of them is a poodle. Just remember that. David planned to use the dogs to track down and kill Betty Ross. This of course put them into direct conflict with the Hulk himself, who is forced to fight all 3 dogs, who honestly kinda almost succeed in defeating him at one point and getting to Betty. Of course, in the end, Hulk saves Betty and ends up winning. I'm just thinking of how Betty's like, what do I do? Do I go? Do I stay? There's so many shots of her just in the car like, the dogs are still here. It kills me. Okay, anyway.
Number 10. Dogpool. We'll start off on a cute note, rather. Wade Wilson of Earth 103173, aka Dogpool, made his first appearance in Prelude to Deadpool Corps issue 3. Wilson was a dog being used as a test subject for Mascara X. Now I love this version because it brings to light the animal testing for beauty products that happens, Mascara X taking place of the evil Weapon X in the story. So after the test went south, they thought the dog didn't survive. His body turned all corpse-like, it wasn't breathing, horrible stuff, so they got rid of it. But those healing abilities brought him back to life. He then broke out of the garbage bag and started walking around again. I thought cats were the only ones with 9 lives. What a sight to see. Now these circus performers did see this. They were driving by and just happened to see this dead dog come back to life, so they used it to make some moolah. He became the main act of their circus, appropriately named the Death-Defying Hound. He was a circus performer until Wade Wilson, the main continuity Deadpool, showed up and then recruited him for the Deadpool Corps. The good boy met his fate in issue 1 of Deadpool Kills Deadpool, but he did so saving Wade, so it's a happier kind of note. Not really, but we'll say it is. Number 9. War. Earth 16558, our Deadpool gets an extreme makeover superpowers edition. He shows up in Extraordinary X-Men issue 8 and we only get to enjoy his presence for 5 issues. After Apocalypse returns in the early 21st century, he recruits Deadpool as one of his 4 horsemen. He recruits him for war. Deadpool and the other horsemen attacked Colossus, got him on the God Squad, and then together the evil team tracked down Storm and their young X-Men. In Extraordinary X-Men issue 10, the X-Men were actually defeated and the Ark containing 600 mutant embryos were taken back to Apocalypse. Things weren't looking that great with Wade on the bad side. When the X-Men invaded Apocalypse's kingdom to try and save the day, Deadpool fought back and went at it with Iceman. Now Deadpool's mask gets ripped here, and then that's when you see Wade with his mouth sewn shut. Not again. We don't like seeing his mouth sewn shut. That's the opposite of what we want. Deadpool cuts his mouth open and you think he's gonna be like, help me, I don't know what I'm doing. But he actually just releases a swarm of insects all over Iceman, winning that battle in a gross, itchy way. But don't worry, Deadpool gets bugged himself later on. He'll soon know what that feels like. I'll explain more of that later on in this list. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would be awesome. Those likes add up and they really do support us and the company. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Let's get right back to this Deadpool list. Number 8, Deadpool the Duck. Howard the Duck has been seen in both Guardians movies and he was in Avengers Endgame. We see him gearing up alongside Earth's Mightiest. This dude has been in the same amount of MCU projects as Natalie Portman. Well, actually more really if you consider the main continuity. That's pretty insane. He's an important character. So when Deadpool the Duck came out back in 2017, fans were excited to see more of Howard. Howard's driving alone one night when Rocket crash lands into his car. Now he's about to congratulate Rocket on his recent box office success in Guardians, but he's rudely interrupted when the raccoon's eyes light up red and then he leaps at Howard. We got a classic case of space rabies. Some spazies. Some of them don't work. Luckily, this is Deadpool's story, so he comes in at just the right moment, and that's when him and Rocket start battling it out. Howard's trying to smooth things out while this is happening. He knows something's clearly off with Rocket. He's taking cover, he's just trying to stay out of the way. And then Deadpool shows back up in the middle of nowhere, questioning why he doesn't teleport more often, which is a great question. And then when he tries using it again, everybody gets fused together during this teleportation. Well, almost everybody. Number 7, Watari. First appearing in 5 Ronin issue 1 back in 2011, Watari is a completely different version of Wade. He's the Deadpool of Earth 11542, referred to in this universe simply as the Fool. The story takes place in 17th century Japan. Watari was one of the best and most dangerous samurai of that time, but like Deadpool of other universes, he was done dirty. He was betrayed by his own friends, he was ambushed by his allies, and then he was just left for death. He laid low for a bit, not by choice. I mean, his face was scarred up, he now had an alcohol problem. He hit rock bottom, but eventually he found his footing and got that long-awaited revenge. We see Watari the Fool make an appearance in Deadpool Kills Deadpool issue 4, alongside some other wacky versions which we can get into later on. Number 6, Dreadpool. In the reality of Earth 12101, the X-Men brought Wade to Dr. Den Brighton, aka Psycho Man, in an attempt to cure him. They wanted him to shut down the voices in Wade's head so he can be, you know, a normal civilian, but he didn't do that, did he? He actually did the opposite. Wade was now encouraged by all these voices in his head to kill the Marvel Universe. All those people, all those superheroes you love. About to meet their fate in a horrible way. He started off by going after the Fantastic Four. Reed and the Thing were gone in just a few pages, and then Sue Storm held Dreadpool off for a bit by making his head explode, which usually does a trick for most villains, but it's Deadpool, so once he healed, she was next to go. Like the whole Fantastic Four family's gone in like literally 3 pages. It's so sad. Dreadpool then steals a device from Reed that he used to take down the Watcher. Even the Watcher isn't safe in this story, and neither are you. Check it out. Number 5, Evil Deadpool. Now these names may start sounding a little bit confusing, like Dreadpool is an evil version that kills our heroes, and Evil Deadpool is the result of a collector with a gross hobby. That's right, Evil Deadpool is from the main 616 universe. He came to life in Deadpool Volume 4, Issue 44. Now it all started with this young gal named Ella Whitby. She was a psychiatrist who was obsessed with Wade. She was so obsessed that she would keep body parts that he lost over time. He'd battle it out, lose an arm, she'd go in, carry it like Saving Private Ryan back to her house. Some of us had a rock collection, others collect kneecaps. That's fine, we're all different. So she would keep these parts in her freezer like a maniac right next to the jumbo freezies, and then when Deadpool found out about this horrible cold care package, he threw them all in a dumpster. This was actually the worst thing that Wade could have done, believe it or not, because once those body parts thawed out, they fused and grew back together to make this evil, much worse smelling Deadpool. Number 4. Headpool. Wade Wilson of Earth 2149 first appeared in Marvel Zombies issue 3. The merc with half a mouth was among the population that gets infected in Marvel's Zombie Run, but then when he's transported to the main 616 universe, he gets taken by armor, and that's when things start to get a little crazy for this guy. He ends up in Savage Land, and believe it or not, the other version that helps main 616 Deadpool assemble the core that I've been mentioning this entire list was this version. The guy with no body, just a head, is actually the perfect sidekick. Minus the non-stop talking, of course. Number 3. Deadpool Kid. The Wild Wild Wade. Okay, an instant classic. Deadpool of Earth 1108 made his first appearance in Deadpool Merc with a Mouth issue 7. When we meet him, he's wanted for bank robbery, arson, putting together a literal stampede, all that Wade goodness. It doesn't matter what timeline you catch him in, shenanigans are in order, clearly. This Deadpool would constantly talk about how much he wanted to take over the town. He had his sights set on Sheriff Fury and of course bounty hunter Logan. This version's quite interesting, but let's be honest, a little limiting what you can do in these dusty towns. So after our 616 Wade shot him in the head and left him for dead, it wasn't until Deadpool kills Deadpool that we see this cowboy again. There's not much you can do in the Wild Wild West. I mean, seeing Wade on a horse or, shooting up saloons, it's cool, but limiting. Number 2. Wolverine Pool. First appearing in Cable and Deadpool issue 46, this Wade Wilson still gets the superhero upgrade, but when Weapon X decides to give him the adamantium treatment, things play out a little bit differently. See, later on, he's recruited by Dreadpool, that guy I mentioned, to take on the Deadpool core members, so he's evil. He was doing a pretty good job, that adamantium skeleton was coming in handy, but during a fight, our main 616 Deadpool tossed a grenade full of bugs at Wolverine Pool. Remember I said you got some with bugs earlier? This is payback. This is why you don't play with bugs. So that bug grenade went off and the bugs ended up chewing Wade apart, and all that was left literally was just that adamantium skeleton and claws. It's a pretty creative way to go out, but it's also really gross. It's kind of like if Oogie Boogie from Nightmare Before Christmas were to take you out, or if that movie was rated R, it would look kind of something like this. And finally, number 1. Death Mask. On Earth 11683, Reed Richards was able to remove that lethal brain tumor from Wade's head, which opened an entirely new future for Wade. Now he was better than ever. There were no evil voices swirling around in his head. In fact, the only voice in his head was his own bright ideas. This Wade was in fact a genius. This keeps getting more and more positive. That's great. We love happy endings. Nice number 1 smooth landing. Did he solve world hunger? Did he stop floods? Did he cure diseases? No, actually. He was still a criminal, a master criminal, actually. See, with that brain, he ended up building an empire and went by the name Death Mask, so it was actually almost worse in this scenario. Just looking at his outfit, it's pretty obvious whose spot he's taking in this universe. He killed Victor Von Doom and changed a few colors to his evil getup, resulting in Death Mask, this red version of Dr. Doom. Even after Death Mask was beaten by our main Deadpool, it still didn't end. Kicking off the list at number 10, Grey Hulk. One of the more badass versions of the Hulk was also the earliest. See, originally Stan Lee wanted the Hulk to be gray, but ink problems made him green. The Incredible Hulk made his first smashing appearance in 1962 when a teenager, Rick Jones, was about to be caught up in a gamma bomb test. Scientist Bruce Banner ran out and threw him to safety, but in doing so, he himself was caught in said explosion, and in turn, he was irradiated with radioactive particles, becoming the Grey Hulk. Our green guy, the main 616 Hulk, is referred to as the Savage Hulk, and Grey Hulk is said to be weaker. They made him an entirely different version in the comics to help explain the color change. They were both fighting to control Bruce. Things get spicy during Peter David's run when we meet Joe Fixit, this mobster Grey Hulk working at a casino. Imagine this guy asking you for your ID. I would bring 5 pieces and a passport, just to be safe. So intimidating. And his hat too, he looks friendly, but he also looks like when he shakes your hand, he's gonna break all your knuckles. Number 9, Skulk. Coming to life in Doctor Strange Fate issue 1 back in 1996, Marvel's Bruce Banner combined with DC's Solomon Grundy. How fun. Another gray version, but a little more out there this time around. Solomon appeared right before Bruce Banner was caught in that gamma bomb explosion, so now the two ended up fusing together, creating Skulk. Skulk was taught by Dr. Strangefate that in order to remain in human form, you need the assistance of magic. Black Widow's palm dances will not work in this universe, my friend. So Banner was like, alright, I'll work for you, just make sure I don't become that awful pale monster. Deal? Deal. Great, awesome. Skulk's last comic was in Lobo the Duck, issue 1, just a year later. He died in the destruction caused by the Gold Kidney Lady. Yes, you heard me correctly. And before we list off some other fun versions of the Hulk, if you want to Skulk smash that like button, that would be lovely. Those clicks really do help us out a lot here. You all rock, now let's keep this list going. Number 8, Peter Parker. Looking now to the 2006 bullet point storyline, if you haven't already guessed from the title, this one's a superhero swap. We love those. Now this is a life where Uncle Ben, well, still died, but he died a lot earlier, so unfortunately he wasn't around to mentor Peter. Give him the whole with great power comes great responsibility rundown. So now Peter's stealing Jeeps, he's blasting Green Day and flipping off the elderly, just the complete opposite guy that we know and love. During the Jeep joyride, it ran out of gas, so Sneaky Pete went off to look for some more to help fill up. Now while he was searching, that's when he just happened to stumble across that gamma bomb test, and he didn't realize that he had this Hulk side to him until later on that night. His friends got in trouble, so they blamed Peter, and that's when he got really angry, and then he turned into the Hulk for the first time. It was nuts. Aunt May straight up had a heart attack. More than fair. After this point, retired Steve Rogers came back, suited up as Iron Man, and then began hunting him down. This universe is crazy. Peter Hulk killed Steve Rogers, and he didn't go down until Galactus arrived on Earth. Not a bad run. Number 7, Ultimate Hulk. This version of Bruce is quite troubled. He was taught to just stay out of his parents' way growing up, and he also hated himself, pretty much. He wanted to be ripped like Captain America, he didn't like his noodle arms. It was a rough go for him in the Ultimate Universe. So when Nick Fury got together the brightest minds to recreate the Super Soldier Serum, Envious Banner was on that team. He did figure it out, or so he thought, but he kept the info to himself. He didn't want any other scientist getting credit. But he took it a little bit too far when he also decided to keep the human testing process to himself as well. He injected himself and became Ultimate Hulk. The first time he changed, he injured Mary and Richard Parker, but down the road he injected himself again, but this time he mixed Super Soldier Serum with Hulk Serum, and then he turned gray, and his first plan of attack was, of course, as you would think, to fight Freddie Prinze Jr. Yeah. Number 6, Infernal Hulk. First appearing in Deadpool Annual 1, this version picks up after Bruce Banner became the Sorcerer Supreme, and his first trick was to separate the Hulk from himself and just banish him as far away as possible. And what better place to throw him than the pits of hell? While in the land down under, Hulk became Infernal Hulk. A little more scary looking than Joe Fixit, just a little bit. So when our 616 banner arrived to this universe with Spider-Man, Infernal Hulk traded places in hell with the other Bruce's Hulk persona. So now that Infernal Hulk is free and he's going back after Banner, he's pissed. So Deadpool, Spidey, and Supreme Banner, they all figured, okay, let's just reverse this banishing spell, and then as soon as Banner shows back up, we break his neck. Alright, go team, let's do it. Number 5. Hulk 2099. John Eisenhart this time around made his first appearance in 2099 Unlimited issue 1 back in 1993. This is the future, of course, one of many alternate Marvel futures where heroes are simply no more. But fear not, as we still have cults. Thank God, you gotta have those cults. One cult called the Knights of Banner was piquing the interest of Eisenhart, but at this point, he was this LA movie studio guy and he wanted to make a movie about these knights or this Hulk cult or whatever. They're pretty much us in the future. They worship the Hulk, they have meetings, they talk about him, they probably create top 10 lists, I don't know. But when they turned down the money and said beat it, Eisenhart wasn't happy. So he tricked one of the young members, Gawain, into spilling the beans about the cult and how they're performing illegal gamma experiments. Gawain is actually a reference to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, an Arthurian story that combined the beheading game and the exchange of winnings. And that's exactly what happened here. John reported this cult and its new secrets, and the police raided and killed everybody. All but Gawain. So John tried to fix what he'd caused, but it was far too late. After a gamma bomb went off, he was turned into the 2099 Hulk. Consumed now with guilt as well, he vowed to protect the young knight, and when Draco killed Gawain, spoilers, he figured he would just defend the people from future threats. Number 4. Compound Hulk. First appearing in Hulk Volume 2, Issue 30, Clue is a smarter version of that Grey Hulk that I mentioned earlier in this list. He's an advanced clone, rather, created by Xemnu. Now, Clue was the result of a cloning gone wrong, classic, and then when Clue and Xemnu were fighting Red Hulk, Impossible Man came in, he was watching the whole thing, and he used his powers to merge both of those guys into the Compound Clue. He didn't last long at all, but anytime the words merge and Hulk are in play, it's bound to get weird. Number 3, Venom Hulk. Venom Hulk is as terrifying as you think. It all goes down in What If Issue 4. It shows us what would happen if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man. So if the Fantastic Four hadn't have been able to separate Peter and the suit initially. It's a fun little alternative. It gets pretty ugly quickly and the other Avengers are called upon to try and stop Peter from causing more irreversible damage. Doctor Strange is hurling spells at him for hours, still it's no use. And you'd think when the Hulk came along he could just, huck Peter into a few walls until he calms down. But he arrives and the symbiote sees his power and he's like, that looks pretty good, I want that, give me. And then when it comes into contact with the Hulk, this nightmare is born. When Thor comes in to hopefully try and end this disaster of a situation, he too is consumed by the symbiote. I really hope we get to see some sort of evil version of the Hulk in this What If Disney show. I mean, Venom Hulk would be amazing. I would love to see this issue on TV. Might be a little long shot, but maybe Grey Hulk perhaps, I don't know. Some sort of evil Hulk is coming, I feel it. Number 2, Lizard Hulk. Still green this time around, just a little more wet and scaly. He comes from Earth 19919. Robert Banner, of course, has a similar origin as the Hulk that we're now familiar with, only he was infected by the Spider Virus in Spider Island Issue 1. So a little more this time around. Now he's got extra arms and he's even more powerful. Just what you want. The Spider Queen at this point is standing tall over Manhattan with the residents of New York City turning into spiders, which I gotta say, worst thing I've ever heard. I feel itchy just reading that. And as for our heroes, it's probably best if they switch to a different animal's DNA to avoid the whole mind control Spider Queen awful situation. So Captain America gets a hairy upgrade and the Hulk gets paired with some lizard DNA, resulting in a weird but exciting storyline. Major Godzilla vibes over here. And finally, number 1, you guessed it, Old Man Logan. Remember that time that the Hulk was a landlord and had Hulklings with his cousin Jen Walters? Let's talk about it. Old Man Logan is an absolute masterpiece, first of all. Created by Mark Miller and Steve McNiven, we get to see a dark future where supervillains have taken over the United States. Bruce Banner ended up taking over California from Abomination and appropriately named it Hulkland. An atomic bomb over California changed Bruce up, he charged him, and now he wasn't this quirky scientist that you know and love. Now he's kind of a dick. Hulk Gang is also a treat. We have in total Bobby Joe, Charlie, Otis, Rufus, Bo, Elrod, Eustace, and of course Woody. Good old Woody Banner, what a gem. They come knocking on your door when you don't pay rent. Yeah, and you thought your landlord sucked. Think again. They're honestly evil, like they're literally evil. They killed Logan's family because they felt like it. They were bored. They whip around in style with the Fantastic Car, and then when Logan returned from his road trip with Hawkeye, well, he was a little upset to say the least. The only survivor once Logan was done with them was Billy Bob Banner. Number 10, the new Red and Blue. Superman 162 was an imaginary tale where Superman splits himself into 2 parts to be more productive. Superman Red and Superman Blue. They were great. They both did a bang up job fixing up cities, saving the day. The love triangle that was happening in Superman comics was also fixed. Superman Blue married Lana, Superman Red married Lois. They did a joint wedding. It was all smiles. And then way later in 1998, we got to see another version of this story play out, only it wasn't as fun and carefree. Here, Superman lost some of his solar powers and instead developed energy-based ones. In order to contain said energy, Supes needed a new blue and white suit. Those new powers allowed for Superman to sense radioactivity, electricity, magnetic forces, and then he would absorb a lot of this power at the same time. When Cyborg Superman teamed up with Toyman, he split the new Supes into 2 and his personality was also separated. Blue Superman wanted to think things through, come up with a plan, whereas Red Superman, well, he was literally red hot. He wanted to take action. Both of these guys ended up loving Lois Lane, so there's no split wedding this time around. In fact, Lois got so sick of both of them, she kicked them out. Imagine saying no to 2 Supermen, you're like, no and no. Not you guys, get out of here. The guys then decided to have a race because that's what mattered at that point. Sure. You know what does matter though? If you click those thumbs up. Yeah, those likes go a long way for the studio, and if you're not already subscribed, take off your jacket, stay a while. It's nice here, I promise. Number 9, Super Santa. He sees you when you're sleeping, and he has a quadruple barrel Gatling gun. How lovely. This 1995 Elseworld story puts Superman in a post-apocalyptic future where he has to go toe-to-toe with these crazy, mutated army of Batmen. The world is much darker than the one we know now. I mean, literally, these nuclear fallouts have left Superman without his UV rays. Good old lack of sunlight. No tans for you. So he hits the gym, updates his naughty list, and when the crazy gang called the DNA Dictators, with a K instead of a C, rob Bruce Wayne's grave and make a monster Batman, only one man can save us all. Super Santa. Number 8. Super Soldier. Coming from the Amalgam Universe, first appearing in Marvel vs. DC issue 3, fans in the 90s got to see these two comic book powerhouses join forces, making these lovely mashups of characters from each universe, origin stories interconnected. It's a great time. In this story, Clark had no pre-existing powers until the Super Soldier Serum came along. We're seeing the two worlds already collide. He had pretty much won the war single-handedly back in 1942 after this, but then he came along Ultra Metello, this massive evil robot sent in, of course, by Lex Luthor. That's when Super Soldier sacrificed his life taking down the villain, and it wasn't until 50 years later that the JLA found his frozen body. But even then, 50 years later, Lex Luthor was still alive. He was keeping it young with some handy-dandy green K meteorite. That must be what Jennifer Aniston uses. Super Soldier ended up taking down Ultra Metello, and in turn, Lex was arrested. We love happy endings. No beards or Gatling guns this time around. We're on the right track. Number 7. Boxer Superman. I feel like nowadays it's all about celebrity boxing matches. Every other weekend it's someone fighting Lil Baby or whatever, one Logan Paul brother is fighting a robot. This next one might be a thing that actually happens, who knows anymore. Coming from Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams back in 1978, part of the all-new Collector's Edition, basically this alien named Rattlar, who is part of a species known as the Scrub, visits Earth, and demands that we pick our best fighter to go against theirs. Rattlar woke up and chose violence. Okay, cool. So they picked their scrapper, and it of course was the ever so fearsome behemoth Hunya. Alright, great. Now if we refuse this after-school space fight, the Scrub will destroy our planet. So Muhammad Ali argues that since Superman technically isn't from Earth, he must be the one instead who fights. Guy's literally a champ. And he's absolutely correct, he has a point. Rattlar is actually amused by this, so he thinks, you know what, instead, why don't you both just fight each other? That ought to be entertaining, right? The fight is set to take place on Bodace, which is orbiting a red star, so it's actually a fair boxing match at this point. No powers for Clark. So Muhammad Ali trains Superman to become a professional boxer in just a few months' time. The fight is then broadcasted intergalactically, millions tune in, pay-per-view probably charged so much for the match, and then Superman gets beat by Muhammad Ali. How amazing is this? Not only that, Ali continues to take on the behemoth as well, knocking him down in the 4th round. He's the greatest in all of the cosmos, or as Muhammad Ali says, they're both the greatest. Okay, so sweet. Number 6. Super Ant-Man. Not from the Amalgam Universe, but dangerously close to it. From Action Comics issue 296, called The Invasion of Ants, we see Superman rocking a different but nice look. So at first we see him and he's on the side of a building with an ant mask, head on, and he's asking for other giant ants to follow him, even making buzz noises to furthermore convince the ants. Okay, what the hell's going on here? Well, after a colony of giant ants were mutated from a nuclear war on another planet, they decided to come check out Earth, as if we didn't have enough ants already. So Superman comes by to save the day, and he figures out that if he uses red kryptonite radiation, he can give himself an ant's head and then communicate with them. If this one isn't considered weird, well, maybe the next one will get you. Number 5. Centaur Superman. Superman Wonder Woman, Whom Gods Destroy, was an issue released back in 1996, and it's a 4-part Elseworlds miniseries that shows us a world where the Germans ended up winning World War II. It's an odd future, to say the least. Bruce Wayne is now the president, and once Cersei sends out her squad to kidnap Lana Lang, Clark and Lois then have to fly to Europe to save her. Clark didn't even use his powers either, he just booked a normal human Southwest flight. Gotta ride in style, I guess, no matter what the odds are. So during this flight, however, trouble came back around for them and the plane went down over Germany. The goddess Athena then turned Lois into Wonder Woman, where she would then go toe-to-toe with the Diana Wonder Woman, who in this story was on the bad side. And as for Clark, when the plane went down, Cersei turned him into a centaur. Just a handsome half-man, half-horse, noble steed. Now of course, looking the way he did, all these other ladies, centaur ladies, were racing over to meet this dashing man. After they all introduce themselves to each other and shake hoofs, all that good stuff, they would then just raid towns and party hard. This is a horrible time for Lois, like she's fighting for her life, and Clark is just prancing around like he's on season 7 of Bachelor in Paradise. He's loving this. Number 4, Super Menace. Coming from Superman issue 137 titled The Super Brat from Krypton, surprise, Kal-El has a clone. So when Jor-El shot Kal-El into space after the destruction of Krypton, that ship ended up hitting a derelict space satellite and then he was duplicated. So the one craft was found by criminals named Derek and Bonnie, and they see this as a golden opportunity to raise another super sidekick, especially one with all the abilities that Clark has. Later on, a kryptonite meteor crashes into Earth and the criminal couple realizes that it doesn't affect the young clone. He grows up in secret, waiting to make his grand entrance as the Super Menace. First things first, let's take care of that other guy though, shall we? He fights the Superman, they fight, and when Superman uses his X-ray vision, he notices something is odd about his foe. And then suddenly, Super Menace makes it rain kryptonite meteors. This of course almost kills Superman until Super Menace decides, you know what, I don't want to be a Super Menace anymore. We love a good change of heart. He saves Superman, he handles his criminal parents, and then he flies off to return back to his natural state of energy and becomes one with the universe. Number 3, Karkan the Mighty. Coming from Superboy issue 183, Karkan was raised by gorillas, Karkan being Kal-El. His ship ended up landing in the jungles of Africa, and he realized that he's different from the others after he learns how to fly. It's basically Tarzan if he was Superman, hence why his name is a combination of both. This version is quite super, literally. I mean, when he's not swinging through vines and hucking his own poop at people, he's saving hundreds of animals from floods. How lovely. Even if it means carrying them by their ears, whatever it takes. He does try his luck in the big city though afterwards, but obviously being raised by gorillas, he had a tough time fitting in. Honestly, good. Fitting in is overrated anyways. If you want to do backflips in the jungle, just go for it. Number 2. Bizarro Superman. First appearing in Superboy issue 68, Bizarro Superman is, as his name suggests, bizarre. He's a man of steel but with the opposite intentions, and his powers are also opposites. Instead of breathing icy cold dad breath, he can now breathe fire, like a dragon. Now he has laser ice eyes too, it's pretty fun. The interactions with Superboy are fun. Bizarro Superman throws Clark across the deck of a pool, and he has to like fly his way casually and steer into the pool to blend in. It's honestly trouble. It's kind of like the Iron Giant, but like crazier? The new 52 version of Bizarro was created when Lex Luthor tried to clone Superman, and instead of waiting 10 years for the project to be completed, Lex released him after 5 years, so in turn now he has his pale, but still jacked look. We love Bizarro Superman, honestly. He's like a Frankenstein that can bench press 1,000 pounds. It's pretty fun. And finally, number 1. Lex-El. Appearing only in Superman issues 230 and 231, we find Lex-El born on the planet Krypton instead of Clark. So Superman, but bald. Super Caillou, basically. His hair loss at such a young age is actually explained in the comic because when he was really young, Lex-El's father, Jor-El, held his head next to kryptonite as a punishment. So it's actually pretty tragic. When Lex and his father did crash land on Earth after fleeing their doomed planet, the rocket distracted Martha and Jonathan Kent, who were bank robbers in the story, and they couldn't see, so they ended up crashing. So that's Clark's life here. His parents died in that crash, and Lex-El grew up to become Superman. It's a fun one-off story. We get to see Clark take out Jor-El and then go on a crime spree. Just a total flip in characteristics. Also, bonus points for Lex wearing a wig on his off time to hide his secret identity. Way more committed to the cause than Clark and his normal reading glasses.
The Multiverse, a domain of infinite possibilities where the weirdest and wildest stuff can happen, giving us some truly weird universes. And kicking things off today, we're looking at an alternate Earth that is probably one of the most obvious ways to change things up. Earth 8311, also known as Larval Earth, is home to anthropomorphic animal superheroes. There are no humans here. Instead, this universe has what is called an anthropomorphic field that has an effect on animals, changing them into humanoid versions of themselves with the ability to speak. This happened to one of the Inhuman superhuman Lockjaw's siblings. Her name was Doc Jaw. She was taken in by Mr. Fantastic, and yes, that's Mr. Fantastic, as a moose, and he trained her to become a pretty accomplished scientist. But she is far from the only animal to make a name for themselves here. Arguably, the most well-known of larval Earth's denizens would be Peter Porker, aka Spider-Ham. But others include Daredevil, Nick Fury, the Agents of Sheep, and the one that caught me off guard the most, Black Panda. On the villainous side of things, we have Magsquito, Sand Manatee, and Kangaroo the Conqueror, which is just fantastic. Now, following the events of the superhuman civil war, people were a little bummed out. Understandably so. That little conflict didn't end in laughs, shaking hands, and happy smiles. It ended in tears, broken friendships, and fallen allies. So, naturally, Reed Richards can't just accept reality for what it is, and he goes searching for alternate Earths where things didn't go so badly in Dark Reign Fantastic Four #2 from April of 2009. But of course, things go south. A power outage causes Reed's machine to go a little off the chain. In an alternate timeline created by the machine, Susan Storm, the Invisible Woman, rules a medieval world taking the name Queen Storm. Her throne is flanked by her brother Johnny in full plate armor, and the Thing dressed like an aristocrat. She seems to be leading one side of a medieval superhuman civil war. We see Captain America, Iron Fist, Cable, Daredevil, and Luke Cage Power Man as they prepare for a battle with a man with an iron heart who is just outside the castle preparing to attack with his group. Now, before the conflict begins, we get to hear Chamberlain Grimm say his classic line, "Milady, 'tis the clobbering hour," and it's fantastic. But before we can see more, we move to other alternate timelines. In Uncanny X-Men number 153, Kitty Pryde has to tell Colossus's little sister Ileana a bedtime story. So what does she do? She comes up with an adorable little story recasting her friends as pirates, wizards, genies, and for one of my faves, Nightcrawler, Kitty turns him into little tiny nightcrawlers that look eerily like Smurfs that she calls Bamfs. At first, there's just one, and it pops up and immediately falls in love with Kitty before like 10 of the little guys start popping up. But this is a comic book. Why tell a bedtime story when that bedtime story could easily just become a completely different universe that actually exists? Thanks to a mishap in the X-Men's Danger Room, Nightcrawler is transported to another dimension where the characters from Kitty's story, including all the Bamfs, really exist. And that place is Earth 5311. 1979's What If number 14 gives us a very different approach to history. Instead of World War II being fought in Europe, it is instead fought in space. In this alternate timeline, we discovered interstellar travel much earlier in our history, and as such, the World War II we fight is more like space sector war between Sector Alpha and Sector Beta in space, and I do not know where that is. As this is still set at the same general time as the regular World War II, some of the same characters are going to be involved, including the original Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos. This story has new high-tech weaponry, fishbowl helmets, and aliens, and it's just a good bit of fun. Now, we learn in the story that Admiral Von Strucker is actually working with the alien Axis powers to create a master race, so it seems that even in this alternate world where we can master interstellar travel, we can't really just figure out racism. Now, in the alternate reality of AD 3167, which appeared in Extraordinary X-Men number 11 from June 2016, Apocalypse showed up in the 21st century, bringing with him the Great Trials. Now, this event saw the end of entire civilizations and races on Earth and left only the Atlanteans, the Inhumans, an AI race known as the Stark Self, the Wakandans, the Mystics, and the Maloids. And they all lived under Apocalypse's rule on Omega World. This was a huge structure composed of bubble worlds that preserved what little remained of Earth after Apocalypse's ascension. The part that will blow your mind is that Omega World itself, the entire structure, is Apocalypse. He still had a human form, and that essentially functioned as the Omega World's heart, keeping the whole place functional. At the same time, his horsemen functioned as like Omega World's antibodies, being sent out to cleanse the structure of anything that could harm their master. The mutant Colossus and a bunch of young mutants were transported here, where Colossus was captured and became another of Apocalypse's horsemen. Apocalypse was now after an ark being held by the mutant kids that contained thousands of mutant embryos. He should have left it all alone though, because it got him a good old sword in the back by the end of the story. That doesn't matter though, because the world is cool. Taking place on Earth 97161, Simon Walterson was a pretty killer football player whose career came crashing down due to a knee injury. Simon found the love of his life, married her, had a kid, and then they both passed away. But wait, it gets even worse. Simon got himself cursed by a witch after he wasn't able to pay her for connecting him with his wife and child in the afterlife. Now this curse turned Simon from a strapping man into a frog. Simon luckily found himself being accepted into a frog clan that lived in Central Park, and Simon took on the frog name of Puddlegup. Now, Puddlegup managed to assist the god of thunder Thor in a war between rats and frogs. After the fight, a piece of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, was broken off, and Puddlegup was able to lift the sliver of hammer, which then transformed into a miniature version of Thor's hammer, and it turned Puddlegup into the mighty Throg, a frog with the powers of Thor. This world is the home of the Pet Avengers, a group of animals who belong to or are related in some way to various superheroes and who manage to form together as a team. Fantastic. Neil Gaiman's Marvel 1602 is one of my favorite comic book stories, but I will admit it can be a little weird. Basically, to lay it out, the universe the story takes place in, Earth 311, actually got its start in a different alternate reality. On Earth 460, Purple Man had used his powers of persuasion to become president for life. In that world, most heroes had been hunted down or had died from old age, but Captain America was one holdout. Unfortunately, he is captured and banished away to Earth 616's 1599. But because he showed up in the world, it inadvertently, and for some reason, created an entirely different alternate timeline known as Earth 311. For some reason, the presence of Captain America destabilized reality and began the emergence of heroes and villains into this world who are counterparts to many of the present day heroes and villains of the Marvel Universe that we are used to. Characters like Count Otto Von Doom the Handsome, Witchbreed, who are actually mutants, Thor from the Fantastic, Sir Nicholas Fury, David Banner, all these guys. These are some of the alternate versions of these characters. The story is so interesting, intertwining actual history with superpowered beings, but it's not without its confusing moments, and most of that has to do with how this story's world even came to be in the first place. While originally a crossover advertisement deal between Marvel Comics and Hostess, you know, the company that owns Twinkies, Snowballs, and those cupcake snack pastries, the Spider-Man of Earth 51914 is an official member of the Spider-Verse, being defeated by Morlun in the first Spider-Verse comic in 2014. But Morlun has defeated many Spider Totems, it's his whole thing. This Spider-Man is still more powerful than you may think. This sweet Spider-Man has all the same powers as our 616 Spider-based hero, only has the added benefit of using Hostess snacks as equipment, whether it be to distract, lure, or even reason with criminals, and it even got him out of tight spots in his relationships. Like when he gave Mary Jane a cupcake so that he could slip away to fight crime. The power of sweet pastries should not be undervalued. Now, using his pastry-based equipment, he was able to defeat the Fly, Printout Man, Simon the Evil Swami, Madam Web, Legal Eagle, and an unnamed jewel thief. So yeah, it's not just a sponsor, it's an actual added ability that puts him a cut above. Unfortunately, this all happened before Morlun showed up and sucked out Hosty Spidey's life force, which was apparently quite sweet. Marvel Max was a 2001 imprint for Marvel that focused on more mature adult stories. As a result, the books were pretty over the top, and that was really their selling factor. But some were just incredibly weird, like the Eternal Max. Essentially, the Eternal Max follows the Eternals, but other than being the immortal servants of the Celestials, these guys are quite different. Taking place just before the dawn of mankind, the Eternals had been serving the Celestials for thousands of years, traveling from planet to mine resources. When the Eternals arrive on a planet, they genetically modify some of the local intelligent life into artificial Eternals, which they call deviants, and they use them as manual labor to make the job easier. When they arrive on Earth though, they do the same thing, turning the proto-humans into deviants. But these deviants are shockingly similar to the Eternals, who are also shockingly similar to us. Now, in the past, the Celestials wiped out every single one of the female Eternals in order to force the male Eternals into servitude. So when these new deviants are created, the male Eternals get all googly-eyed for the female deviants. A large number of the Eternals go against the rules and teach the deviants how to communicate, and they begin to procreate with them. This leads to essentially a mini civil war among the Eternals between their leader Ikedan and the second in command, Crassus. It all leads into the Eternals and these deviants basically becoming the first real humans on Earth. At least, that's kind of how I interpreted it. If you are over the age of 18, definitely give it a read because it is really interesting, but also very mature. And finally, if you have never read Marvel, just prepare yourself. This comic kind of just goes and doesn't really stop. The entire thing is satire, but like, not good satire like at all. There's even a page in each issue dedicated to explaining the jokes, and the story itself barely has any kind of actual plot. It's just, well, it was all part of a bet. In 2002, Bill Jemas was vice president at Marvel Comics. He got into an argument with Peter David, and the two of them made a bet. Each would write a comic book starting from issue number 1 to see whose comic could sell more copies. Peter started Captain Marvel, and Bill started Marvel. Marvel features a Superman parody named Kal-AOL, who is the son of Ted Turner and Jane Fonda. It features a farting dog, a racist Iron Man, a farting Rush Limbaugh, scantily clad women for no reason, time travel for no reason, a person who may or may not be God, duckbill dinosaurs that talk, rants about how evolution is fake, and then, what is probably the highlight of the comic, they grab a Jurassic otter, and as they move closer to the modern day, that otter not only evolves to become Wolverine, but that otter Wolverine is also the father of the entire human race. And that is all I got. Thank you so much for watching and making it to the end of the video today on Top 10 Nerd. My name is Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop, and even if I don't, stay safe and peace out.